Hello everyone, this is Jimmy Cultist back again with another Dreams video logic tutorial. Today we're discussing how to create a Minecraft block mechanic, and I don't mean block as in blocking attacks, I mean creating and destroying blocks, how to replicate that well-known formula. The best way to do so, I will demonstrate. Number one, you're going to need a block sculpt. Technically, you don't need blocks. If you wanted to just make it a sphere or anything, really, it can be done. It just has to be fairly compact. And you put a microchip on it, which I have labeled dirt, but it could be anything. It could be stone. Inside the microchip, I have placed a tag roughly in the center of the mass of the object. And I've labeled that dirt. If you press L1 and square and leave this menu open, you can easily move the tag to wherever you want, just as a reminder. And I've taken the output of the tag and connected it to a destroyer. So when that is met, this will be destroyed. Another thing I would like to mention real quick is that our little block here is set to scenery, and I advise turning down the imp interaction to ignore and the physics cost too low to save on thermo. Now in the background here, I've created a big brick composed of these blocks. Each one of these sections is composed of 100 blocks in a square, configuration. And there's about, let's see, 8, which would equal 800 blocks. And that's roughly 22% on the gameplay. If you delete the puppet, it comes to about 20% gameplay. So that'll give you a rough estimate of how much you're going to be eating if you want to make this into an actual game. I think it is possible to do. You just don't want something super giant, something a little bit more controlled, like a small mini game. If you're familiar with the Captain Toad franchise or whatever, something of that nature is probably best to realize this mechanic. I don't think you're going to do something on the actual scale of Minecraft, just because Dreams can't handle it. But nevertheless, the Dreams community might surprise me and manage to pull something off that's bigger. But anyway, let's get on to the actual destroying part. How to destroy the blocks. I've borrowed a first-person puppet. It is not mine. I borrowed it from the community. And I'm going to give credit real quick. It's called Blank First-Person Character. Made by this person. I'm sorry, I don't know. K2AI1, I guess. I guess we could give it a like, after all, we are using it. But I only wanted to use it because I was in a hurry to construct this video. Normally I would construct my own. But anyway. This puppet uses a mount equipped to the head of the puppet, but you don't necessarily have to do it that way. Whatever methodology you use, as long as you're in the camera rig, like whether it was a block that follows a tag or whatever else, first person, I've covered that prior, but the main thing is, what's this do? Nothing. Don't know what that's doing there. I've also got a light so that you can see things in the dark, but not important. The main thing that's important is this little chip here, which you can open with L1 and X. And I've connected the controller sensor, the R1 output, to this node. And if you press L1 and square, you can connect an input to the power, which I have done with this NOT gate. Very familiar configuration. I use it a lot to prevent playback. Just stick it right in there with X. And I've got a timeline set to play once, normal speed. And in the timeline, there is a switch connected to the NOT gate to prevent playback for a certain duration. I've also connected the node to the power of the timeline, of course. I've got a little text displayer with a sign of a fist. If you just type in these little arrows and then put UI grab and finish it, you pretty much make that. I've got the opacity on low, about 13%. It only appears when you press L1. I've also got this little trigger zone which detects a tag labeled dirt, which you may be familiar with prior. It's set to the center. I've made it stick out fairly far. If you need to experiment with the zone, you can simply look at the block and get a rough idea of the kind of field of vision you're going to have and how far you want it to go. And you could tweak it to your, requirements. Just press R2 to pull it in and out, change the size. You can also manually do it this way, although I prefer not to. It's just a lot less precise. And I've connected the input, or I should say the output, the detected output, to a little keyframe that makes this fist have full opacity. So it indicates you're successfully hitting a block. And besides that, I've also connected it to a timeline set to play once called Hit Dirt, which has a small sound effect and emits this painting made out of paint flecks, which is set to 500 playback speed, set to pulse, doesn't loop, and basically just makes it look like dirt's flying out. And it's got a maximum emitted lifetime of 1.0, set to emit once. And yeah, let's go ahead and experiment. Not L1, but R1 is the dig button. There we go. We removed a block. You could even make it so that you gain resources from this, if you want. I would probably connect it to the Hit Dirt timeline. I would just put a variable representing the resources, or I should say a variable modifier for dirt or whatever other things you want. Just set it to add, then add an operation value. I would do that. You could also create different types of land if you want, like if you wanted to copy this out, or make a brand new sculpt even. Something like, it clearly doesn't look like stone, but just bear with me. Pretend it's stone. All you gotta do is change this little thing here and make it stone. And then go over to the timeline and add a new trigger zone set to detect stone. connected to a different output or a different timeline. It would be hit stone. You could add a different sound effect and even a different dirt effect, or stone effect, I guess you'd call it. And this is a lot cheaper than, you know, adding a whole lot of extra rigmarole to the actual microchip itself. It's all inside the puppet, self-contained, and can be reused. So it would save you a lot of logic thermo. But yeah, that's how to make the destruction of blocks. I'm going to cover how to add blocks, which is a less refined system at this point. But here's how you add blocks. There's a lot that we're repeating. We're reusing the general configuration of the node connected to a timeline with a NOT gate and a switch on the timeline. I've also added a calculator set to greater than 0.02. And the only reason why I've done this is because I'm using the R2 button in order to place bricks, and the R2 button is very pressure sensitive. So I made it so that you don't have to apply much pressure to place a block. I've also got this little red fist to indicate that you're placing. It doesn't really make a huge difference though. Guess you could turn the opacity up. The thing that does make a difference is I've got an emitter. Now what I did for the placeable blocks is all I did was copy the format, this block. And there's one extra piece of logic in here, which is a gyroscope set to all axis and high speed of, well, maximum 99999. Full strength, full dampening. And this is an extra piece of logic, so this is probably more expensive than your standard destructible brick in the environment. But I've also, on the emitter, set it to emit once. And they have a lifetime that's infinite, essentially. However, the amount that you can emit at once is only 4, meaning that there can only be a limited number in the level. So I guess you won't be able to build houses and things like you can in Minecraft, but, you know, you gotta be realistic with what you have. I've also set it to recycle emitted objects, so they'll disappear once you've placed a few. Here's 3. And unlike Minecraft, there won't be like a grid-based placement, so, you know, they're going to be able to, you could place them inside of each other and at weird angles. There might be a way to add grid-placed movement. I think there is some kind of auto-guide tool, but I don't really know how it functions, so I can't speak on it. But this is the most basic way to accomplish the mechanics of placing and destroying blocks, similar to Minecraft. And that's pretty much all I have to say on the subject. I hope you found this helpful if you're making your own game. Maybe this will inspire you to make some kind of mini game where you're on an island and you have to use a limited number of blocks to survive or something. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was an insightful video or otherwise enjoyable. If it was, then go ahead and subscribe if you can, and hit the bell to keep up with our videos. Also, subscribed or not, give a like. If you have any questions or statements, leave a comment. We try to answer all comments. If you like what we do here and want to help out, consider becoming a channel member. Alternatively, you can check out the link in the description to support us through Patreon. Until next time, take it easy. That's all for now.